What is freedom worth? In the past, people came to these shores because they desired freedom. They came from places where freedom was not often a part of their life. Some came for spiritual freedom, the ability to worship freely without fear of harm, coming from places where the idea that you could choose your own church or to worship the way that you felt without having the bailiff knock on your door was something rare. Some came for political freedom, escaping an authoritarian world or the evils of communism. They came from places where if you thought for yourself, if you spoke your mind, then you could be arrested, you could be imprisoned, or you could even be killed. Some came simply for the freedom of big lands, big skies, a big opportunity to make something their way, to have elbow room, something that they maybe didn't have in the lands that they came from. They wanted to be part of something that was greater than themselves as they worked to build a province and a country for tomorrow. They saw this as an opportunity to look out over this vast land and do something amazing. But all of them had to sacrifice in order to have this freedom. This freedom was not waiting there for them, ready wrapped. They didn't walk into their homes, into their properties, and just take residence. They had to work. They had to build. Many left homes and families, and they would never see them again. Can you even imagine that? Saying goodbye to your loved ones, getting on a boat, crossing an ocean, and knowing that you would never have the ability to see them again, and the best that you could hope for was a letter. But they were willing to do it. Some left behind ease and comfort. You could go from fancy ballrooms and wonderful comforts and ease, and you would come out to a place where even getting water was a chore. But they were willing to do it because of what they saw they could build here. And some in doing so lost their lives. They were willing even to sacrifice everything that they had in order to make something great. And many times for them, it was something great for tomorrow, for their children, for the ones who would follow on. The early days of Alberta were hard and harsh. There was no welfare programs. There was no easy ways to protect oneself from all of the different things that happened in life. There was no insurance company who would just roll in and fix things. There was no government you could complain to and have them fix all of your problems. The climate was harsh. The country was rough. Disease was a possibility, and guess what? You couldn't call 911. But it was worth it for them, for freedom. They chose to give up their safety, their security, their ease for a life that would bring them true and complete freedom. Now, we're not talking an empty freedom, a freedom where you can just do whatever you want and everybody else has to give you the room to do it. They believed in responsibility. It was not anarchy they sought, but rather the ability and the responsibility to make one's way and help one's neighbors in the process. This freedom was not anarchy, but rather the ability and responsibility to make one's way and help one's neighbors as you went in the process. They saw their role not just to do their own thing, but to ensure that others could do what they needed to do to survive and thrive as well. There was no government when they started out. There was no welfare, no pension, no insurance. If they didn't make a go, they could lose everything. And some could even die. They could take all of their wealth, pour it, into their life. They could take all of their effort, all of their work, all of their striving, even their family, and put it into this project. And yet they could risk it all. But they were willing to do that for something more, for freedom. The freedom to build, the freedom to live, the freedom to hope. So when the world became dark and dangerous, these same people were willing to leave their country, to leave the country of freedom and opportunity, and to go to sacrifice themselves for someone else's freedom. Oftentimes on Remembrance Day, we talk about the fact that our soldiers fought for our freedom, and indeed it's true. But there's something unique about our soldiers. They fought for other people's freedom. They could have sat here, shielded by great oceans, protected from the dangers that were going on in the rest of the world that caused great wars to happen. And they could have said, this is someone else's problem. But instead, they valued freedom enough that they were willing to sacrifice and pay the price that others could join them in freedom. They came back and taught their children how to be free, how to value what they had, how to build on that freedom, and how to bring others and welcome others into that freedom. But other people came who asked us to trade our freedom for other things. They promised that if we gave our freedom, we could gain safety and security. We could have no other problems. We could not have to work so hard, that the government would provide everything we needed. They promised that if you just give a little more, a little more, a little more, then eventually you could have it all. Many were sold on this false idea. Money would be free. The government would solve it all. The country could be utopia. Instead, this country has experienced a singular decline and even collapse of the values and the freedoms that we once took for granted. People who said it could never happen here witnessed things happening that were beyond belief. People who looked around and said, our country is a shining example of all that a country should be, realized that no longer could we say that when freedom was being so circumscribed, so closed down. The promise of ease and simplicity has been proven to be a lie, as people have to work harder, as they have to be less safe, as they have to fear as they walk around city streets, as they have to fear even in their own home as they sleep at night. And they enjoy less of their freedoms every day. It's easy to talk about how free as a society we are. In fact, we have a charter of rights and freedoms that are supposed to guarantee these things, and yet that very charter has been used to limit people's freedoms, to close people's options, to stop people from being themselves, to force them to conform to something else. The cost of freedom is high, but the cost of so-called safety, so-called security, so-called progress is much higher. So the question is, how about you? How much is your freedom worth? Not just empty freedom, as we say, a freedom without bounds, where you get to do whatever you want and other people have to put up with it. But the freedom to be a full Canadian, able to help other people, to work for your own betterment and for the betterment of your family and community. The freedom where you can have enough and more than enough, but then build for other people. The Government of Canada asks more of us every day. They ask that they will move into our sphere of freedom, that they will take from us, that they will become the judge and the jury about how we will live our lives. We can't just give a little freedom. They want every bit of our autonomy as they work to reshape Canada in their own image. So will you be willing to give up your freedom for comfort? Certainly, it will be offered. They will give you a gilded cage to live in. Maybe you'll give up your freedom for safety. You know what? If you just have the government doing everything for you, if they just hold on to you, if they look after you from baby until you die, then you can be safe and you won't have to fear. Maybe your freedom can be bought with a welfare check. If they just give you enough money, then all of a sudden you'll be happy to give them everything else. Maybe they can get you with threats. The freedoms of every Albertan, though, are under attack. Economic, spiritual, political, social. This new Canada seems to be out to stop them all, to shut down every freedom, to force you into a mold where you will be exactly what they tell you to be. We can stop this process, though. We can shape our own destiny. We can change our country. We can become independent. And we can have the right to be truly, deeply free, based not on what the government tells us we can do, but what we have the right to ask for as free Albertans.